What's up, fellas? Welcome to the garage. Carrying on with the Escort Express engine swap. I got some good news and some bad news. The good news are, as you can see, the engine is sitting perfectly inside the engine bay. Also, I've topped up all the fluids and also mounted the intercooler here, the airbox and everything. I have also taken it for a ride, and by gut feeling I would say that it pulls quite better than it did before. But anyways, now to the bad news. The bad news is that for some unknown reason, even if everything's connected, here the battery is connected, and here if I connect this one to here, you know, as it's supposed to, usually that leads directly to the ignition switch, and this one goes directly to the starter relay, so it should turn the engine over. But here in our case I can turn the key. The glow plugs are doing something, see, got the light and everything, and with me turning the key, see, nothing happens. Only this odometer or whatever goes blank, and that's it. So anyways, I was scratching my head for some time about this. I did actually put this original solenoid that was on the car here, like on the ground, you see, grounded onto the engine. I thought that might be an issue with the immobilizer, but I guess the immobilizer is smarter than we thought. How the hell did it know that we swapped the engine over? I have no idea. So again, we kept the original key, the original lock, the original ECU and the original fuel shutoff solenoid. I don't really know how this system, you know, doesn't want to cooperate with this engine. The fuel pump itself, of course, is different, but I don't really see what the difference would be regarding the other connections on the pump here. But anyways, since everything else works just fine, we're gonna sort this out the most simple and the most reliable way. That is by bypassing the starter motor and the fuel shutoff solenoid as well. Now, technically speaking, this does present a safety or theft issue, but I do have a couple of tricks up my sleeve to make it a little harder to steal. Alright, so let me put these bypass systems on there. Here I removed this cover, and this way we gained access to this ignition barrel, ignition switch. Now I have to remember or just test which one is which, and then I will connect everything together. I'm gonna use a relay for the starter motor just to be safe and not to overload any circuits here with the electrical current, and we'll be good to go. Once we sort all that out, we'll be going for another test drive to see how the performance improved. Okay, so I've somewhat neatly wired everything together here. Here I got the plus 12 volts over a fuse going over here. Here we got the all new starter motor relay, and here I've taken a wire going off of the fuel shutoff solenoid going here in the back, and here I found a neat little hole and just poked the wires through there. See, all neatly packed with lots of zip ties, of course. Now I got my wires over here. I got the starter motor wire and the fuel shutoff solenoid wire. Now I can just put this all back on and just determine which terminal is which and just wire this thing in. Also, I'm gonna wire in a fuse for the fuel shutoff solenoid, just in case. Alright, so check this out. We're all wired in. See, I've put some zip ties, some fuses in the mix, and that's what we ended up with. So now let's go and see. It's a moment of truth. Let's see now. Will it start? Will we be able to shut it off? Alright, let's find out. Wait for the glow plugs. Okay. Alright. Works like a real automobile now. No more starting with cables and everything. We don't have any check engine light or anything similar, so that's just great. Okay, we'll have to tighten that belt a little, but overall working just fine. The rev counter is working. Let's see if we can shut it off too. Okay, that's what we were after. Again, try and starting it up. Great, except for that squeaking belt. All right, so now we can actually go for that test drive and see what the performance looks like compared to the original engine. So let's go. Let's not forget to install the boost gauge this time. Again, I just teed off an extra nipple to go to the boost gauge. Then we'll just put it like here. Okay, so let's see now. We're gonna go to that same stretch of road than we had last time and just go again from 40 to 100 kilometers per hour. Okay, there we have the sign. 40. All right, pedal to the metal. Okay, what's interesting here is that we're seeing pretty much the same boost as we did before. That's around 0.6 bar. So the boost isn't increased at all. By gut feeling, I would say it goes a little bit better, but it isn't really substantially faster. Now the reason for that would possibly be that we're not actually using the intercooler here. Originally, the intercooler has some sort of a duct to lead fresh air through it, you know, and cool it. Well, now we just have it covered with the bonnet. So that might actually make a lot of difference, especially since the boost level is the same. Okay, we can try 40 to 100 again. Third gear. Okay. So yeah, this intercooler is very hot. Actually, you know what? We can actually measure the temperature. Hold on. Finally, I remembered to use this one. This is an infrared thermometer. So we can actually take a quite accurate measurement. All right, we got 64 degrees Celsius. That's not really cool. So of course, with the bonnet shut and this insulation covering the top side of the intercooler, we don't have much intercooling going on here. So we'll have to sort this out somehow. Originally, these diesel Escorts have some kind of duct here through which the air passes and then goes through the intercooler and actually makes it work. So I guess we'll have to figure something out about that. Now, possible solutions or modifications rather, if we wanted to make it go faster, would be, of course, to make the intercooling work. Also, we could raise the boost pressure on there, on the boost actuator, and simply make the boost higher. But it might be that we wouldn't really raise the horsepower level that way. Sooner or later, we would run into an obstacle simply because the pump wouldn't be able to provide enough fuel to make more power. So we might have to mess with the fuel pump as well. There's only another thing we could try and change on the car, and that is the ECU. I seriously doubt that would make any difference just because the fuel pump is totally mechanical, as well as the boost regulation and everything. But we can give it a shot and see if we notice any change at all. So now let me call the owner of the car to let him know about the results here and see what he wants to do now. And we'll carry on later. Alright, so we're back on the lift with the Escort Express. The owner decided to just leave it as it is regarding the boost level and the fuel pump settings. So now, after all successful first tests, I can go ahead and change the fuel filter and the oil filter and the oil, of course. So now let's do that. I do have to tighten the alternator belt, I think, just a little bit and just change the oil. And that's pretty much it. Then we'll go for the final test drive and then we'll park this car and wait for the owner to pick it up. Still the same boost, 0.6 bar. Boost compensator, 1.5 turns in. Alright then, now this will actually conclude our Escort Express job we had here. The car has got a fresh new clutch, also new oil in the gearbox, fresh oil inside the engine. We changed all the filters, so there's no reason that this one wouldn't run happily for a long time and plenty of kilometers. Regarding the car performance, we did actually gain some noticeable, although not big, power out of the engine, and the car actually runs perfectly after the engine swap. Now, even though we didn't gain that much oomph as I thought we would, this engine will actually offer a quite better base for future modifications. The very first of them being, I would highly suggest at least, the intercooling tunnel here, to get that intercooler working properly. Trying to get a little more power out of this engine, I did mess with the fuel pump just a little bit. That is, just with the boost compensator membrane right there. And as you can see in the footage, it didn't make a significant improvement. Also, I did try raising up the boost with the simplest method there is, and that is by bleeding some air before the wastegate actuator. And interestingly enough, the boost pressure remained exactly the same, 0.6/0.7 bar. So that leads me to believe that the boost on this engine is actually limited by a fuel amount that the fuel pump is providing. It makes perfect sense. The pump is set to be providing, a certain amount of fuel, and it just isn't enough to really spin the engine that much, and consequently also the turbo. As I said, I did try a couple of different settings on the boost compensator membrane down there, but again, that made little to no improvement for the overall performance. So we could go and set up the maximal fuel amount inside the fuel pump, which is totally possible. I can show you where the max fuel setting is done here on this fuel pump, which is pretty much the same as this one, except it doesn't have that fuel compensator that comes fitted here somewhere. But anyways, that one has exactly the same plug as this one, and you just remove this thing and you can actually set the fuel amount in there. So the logic behind that fuel setting is that you just set the amount of fuel and then limit the boost amount with the wastegate, Now the wastegate comes in use, let's say. But anyways, we won't be experimenting with this on this car, because again, the owner has this car for a kind of a daily driver, and I guess the fuel economy is also a big factor there. Of course, if we turn up the fuel economy will go down. But as always, it's a compromise. If you want to go fast, you won't go for free. I will attempt to fool around with the fuel settings on this pump here someday, and that I guess will be happening on the Ford P100 project, which we have back there. The owner of this car and this engine has actually decided to leave this engine for me, so we'll have an extra engine to explore the boundaries with. But anyways, that's gonna be it for this time. With this Escort Express, we might actually meet again, you know. If the owner decides to actually put a stage 1 tune on it, we'll actually take some more time and try getting some more power out of this one. But first, I'm expecting again to get at least that intercooler running properly. So that's it for this time. If you like this kind of content and want to follow along all the projects we got here, make sure to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Be good!